Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Through the Big Sticks podcast. Obviously 2 massive prelims on the weekend. Very lopsided results, and I'll go through them through this podcast. But as 2-week break between now and the grand final, I'm going to split sort of this podcast into 2 parts. So part 1, which you're listening to now, will be the prelim final analysation and sort of what happened. Also any big stories that came out of them, obviously there are. And then part 2 will be sort of tips, and that'll be after Brownlow night, so we can have a quick squiz at that, and also any more big stories that came out of the week. But in saying that, let's get into it. Alright, so the first prelim Friday night at Optus Stadium, Melbourne taking on, well, you could almost say Melbourne taking on no one. Geelong were very poor, very, very poor. And the D's, well, they were fantastic, I guess. Couldn't discredit them with anything. You know, Max Gawn playing probably the game of his career, debatably one of the greatest games in the modern era by a single player. And then kicked 5 goals and was truly dominant. Played like the best defender in the comp, an All-Australian key forward, and was running around like a midfielder. So it's very versatile, big Maxi, and great to see, especially if you're a D's fan. Probably not so much if you're a fan of the Cats. But the Cat, another story out of that is the Cats did say that there's sort of a virus. Now that'll trigger some people, but not COVID. It's some food poisoning, I suspect. I don't know, but they reckon that's not an excuse for how poorly they performed. But yeah, I want to keep this podcast positive, so back to the Demons. You know, their running power, that's one thing I really noticed. They run for each other, and they're sort of the Richmond 2.0. They run in waves. And, you know, they got, usually Oliver would win the hard contested ball, get it out to Gawn, handball received from track, running through the midfield. You'll have Langdon, maybe Harms, Viney running alongside him, work through them, kick into Ben Brown, Bailey Fritsch, and well, everything went right for them Friday night, except for Stephen May twinged his hamstring. But so in the first quarter, early in the first quarter, he's come off, gone down to the room, sort of had a quick assessment of it, and had a look at it. And then it must have hurt, but he came back on for the start of the second quarter, and played up until half time. He definitely didn't look 100%, but he still got the job done, and then was subbed back off at half time for James Jordan, who was the Medi sub. And that would be the best game I've seen the D's play all year. I've watched a lot of the games as well. And a phenomenal performance. Also on Stephen May, he on the Melbourne website Saturday morning, he said, quote, "No chance I missed the grand final," because he, you know, went back on to the ground. He's surprised. I think he was surprised how good it feels now. So, yes, you should be concerned, but I think you'll be fine. And yes. And then another play I've noticed is everyone talks about Lever and May as the key interceptors. Even throw Christian Salem in there, he doesn't lose many one-on-ones. But they're key interceptors but with the rise of Luke Jackson and him working obviously with Max Gorn, best on ground, if it's a stoppage in the forward 50, usually Luke Jackson will be taking the ruck, tapping it down to the likes of Cozzy Pickett, Petrarca, Oliver, and the midfields have really beginning to hit the scoreboard. And that's good to see, but he's tapping it down to them whilst Gorn floats back sort of on the wing. So if the opposition does win it, they'll kick it long and high to Maxi Gorn. And then, back in. And the Demons' wall, when the ball goes in, I reckon they lock it in there really well. Ball's not coming out. So that'll be one thing for the Dogs to watch. And then, just their running power and everything. And as we transition into the second of the two prelims, it was almost just as lopsided. We had Maxi Gorn, obviously kicking 5 goals for the Ds, but if you were to combine the two scores of the losing sides, the Power and the Cats, so the Power scored 42 points, the Cats scored 45, combine them and they're not beating either team. So the Dogs had 116 and the Ds 125. So it combined the two losing sides. That's how lopsided it was. Yeah, and all week all we heard was they're so hard to win. They're the hardest games to win, which I'd agree. Usually they are. They're the best ones to watch. You think back to last year, you had Richmond by a goal over a packed crowd at Adelaide Oval, over Port Adelaide. Came down to the wire, but not this week. But that sets up the grand final where the Ds will be playing the Dogs because the Dogs have flogged Port Adelaide. Well, that's about all the terminology you could use for it. They have straight up flogged them. Norton was phenomenal. He flew at everything. So, we talked about Stephen May's fitness before, but I think he'll get the matchup on Stephen May. And he's just so athletic. He crushes the packs. He very rarely loses the contest. So he might not win it, but he'll bring the ball to ground for the likes of the mids who went to the forward line and Lipinski, Hannon, and Cody Waitman, who'll be coming back into the side after missing the prelim. He was their spark against the Bombers in the elimination final, And it was just a great job by the Dogs. Luke Beveridge coaching like his life's on the line. He's coaching phenomenally. His playing group, their mentality is very tough. I think it's very justified all year. These two sides have been the best. I think they both started 6-0. The Ds obviously went on to go 10-0 before losing to Adelaide. And so that really does set up a great grand final. And if you look around the ground, every matchup could go either way. And great season from both sides, but whoever wins, it was just their day. If you to play the match 10 times, I wouldn't be surprised if the Demons won 5 and the Dogs won 5. But it's just the way it goes. All the best on their day. And quick shout out to Josh Shackey for the Dogs. He did an incredible job on Olir. His influence was just absolutely disintegrated in the air. He had none. And not only he played him from behind, so Alir's trying to watch the footy, read it, come off, but he doesn't know who to come off because his man's behind him. He's got to watch the footy, watch where the ball's going, watch his man. And then for Shaki to take 6 marks, and he really could have kicked, he had 1 goal 3, so he could have kicked 4 goals. He did a phenomenal job as the defensive forward. And you'd think he gets the job on Lever after that performance. So that might limit Lever, although the D's want to play Lever on a small. And then the Dogs at ground level, that was really what killed Port Adelaide. The Dogs crumbing the ball. I think Bontempelli kicked 3 goals. 1 was on the run, and then the rest were ground level contest, throw it on the boot, straight through. At top of the goal square, I think they kicked 4 goals from there, 4 at least, that I can recall. And there's just, once again, Norton flies, brings it to ground, front of the pack. And then you got the Crummers picking it up, kicking a snag, kicking 4 snags, and that was what killed Port Adelaide. See, that's the first half of the podcast. I've rambled on about the D's, and you'd think, well, how can anyone beat them? And then I talk about the Dogs, and you'd think, well, how can anyone beat them? You know, it truly is a very good matchup. 25th of September, one to watch. And then for the Dogs also, Bailey Smith, hero last week, cult figure of the club. He kicked 4 goals. Very hard runner. I think you'd have to put Ed Langdon on him because no one else is going with him. You got to have an incredible runner. You really, really would put time into him. Stop him from hitting the scoreboard. Stop him from getting. He doesn't need. He's one of those. He's sort of like Toby Green, one of those players that doesn't need 35 touches, 30 odd touches to have a massive impact on the game and really turn the tables. He could have 19, 18, but hits the scoreboard, gets his teammates involved, and is a truly phenomenal player. And then also for the Dogs, Stephen Martin was the choice to come back in against Port Adelaide, playing against Scott Lysette. Obviously Gawn, especially after that performance, will be a lot harder than Scott Lysette, but I reckon it was a great selection, and he played well. He didn't turn the tables or win them the game or anything, but he stopped Lysette's influence that was there in round 23 that led to Port Adelaide winning. And then, so if that's what he'll be aiming to do again on grand final day, just even it out against Max Gawn, even out the contest. Don't let him tap it down to the likes of Petrarca, Oliver, because that's what I thought was really impressive again from the D's. Their centre clearances, also stoppages. Clayton Oliver wins the hard ball, gets it out. Petrarca streaming through the middle. And it's almost like a set play the way they run it. And against Geelong, they scored 100 plus points from clearances and stoppages, which is astronomical if you think about it. Truly, that would be really what the Dogs, would be trying to stop. Look, both teams, they do the 1% as well. Yeah, this grand final could really go anyway. That's why I'm waiting to tip it for part 2 of the podcast. Which, in saying that, if you want to see part 2 of the podcast and keep updated with the channel, please subscribe, share if you want, like, Try to grow the channel. It'd be real nice. Thank you. So yeah, I think that'll about do it for this episode. I'll see you guys very soon for another video, and I'll see you for part 2 of the Three the Big Sticks podcast next week. Goodbye.